I'm super excited to present to you a conversation with Elliot Williams. Elliot is going to join us. You know him from CNN. And there he is. He's just arrived. Hi.
Sorry about that. I saw you for a second and then I didn't see you and now I see you again. So now we're good.
These are issues you don't have at CNN, right? This
Oh,
is,
wait.
there, your camera's gone off. That's
Oh,
okay. This is
come
all part of
on.
the fun.
Oh my God. Really?
It's
Why
okay.
isn't the camera
Folks,
off?
yeah, I don't know. They just decided to do that. You never know. The fun with technology, I like to say. There you are.
Sorry, man.
Folks, that's our friend Elliot Williams dressed
Hi.
down. You've never
Down.
seen him on CNN dressed like that.
You have not. You have not. You have not.
Elliot, I didn't have time to get the hardcover, so I have the Kindle. And thank you for writing this book. Thank you for
Yeah.
making the time to talk to us. The full title. Wait, you wanted
Well,
to go first?
I would just say the most Srinivasan thing is actually having it on a device though. So I think it's on brand. It's on brand.
Well, fair. That's fair. But I also say I still do something that I want to invite everyone else to. Every Sunday morning, we read the Sunday New York Times
Mhm.
out loud like crazy people. I've been doing it for 10 years,
I
and
know.
I need you to be a guest on it at some
Mhm.
point.
Mhm.
So I still love print. And what is your attitude toward print?
Absolutely all in on print. There's no question. Well, I know you're gonna talk about my book, 5 Bullets, in a moment, but I do think a very enjoyable way to experience that book is by audiobook. I read the audiobook and I found that immensely gratifying and fun to do. But, no, I mean, there's just something different and special about books.
Yes. And of course, if you've written a print book, then you will feel that even more. And you can see that we have books all behind me. So this is the first time that I'm doing this Substack live thing. It's only the second time I'm doing it, but the
Yeah,
second
yeah.
first time I'm doing it on the desktop. And
Mhm.
so they are very consciously showing us the full screen where you and
Exactly.
I are, but they're also showing us the mobile version so that it's
Exactly.
so narrow.
Exactly.
And that's the world we live in, right? Where everything's about mobile first
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
making sure you're able to get your content out there. Folks, please share this with your friends around the world. They can actually talk back to Elliot Williams. If you've ever felt like throwing something at him, or when you're watching TV, throwing something at the TV. He was on with Smirkanish the other day, and often I want to throw things at Smirkanish, but here
Aw.
you get to ask. He's great. I like him. But look what's going on behind me.
Did
I don't know.
Is
I
that an
guess
accident, or did you deliberately do that?
I didn't do that.
Oh my god. Alright,
I think it's MacBook has a reaction feature. So if I
right.
go like this, and then maybe if I go like this, it will make a heart. Who knows? This is the fun with everything we're doing. I see several friends have joined us, including some of our paid subscribers. Thank you,
Alright.
folks, for being a paid subscriber. We really appreciate you. The Sree Sunday Note appears every Sunday, mostly, and it is a take on politics, tech, life, and I've learned so much doing it for the last 8 years
Mhm.
and being able to talk about where the world's going and sort of my take on it and getting wonderful responses, and then some people angry as well, and I think that works in today's world.
Everybody's angry.
Uh,
A lot of anger.
yeah, yeah, exactly. The anger is part of it. I just want to start by asking for Mitzi. Tell us.
My sister, who's deceased, actually, my sister died in 2021 of following a brain hemorrhage,
Mm,
and
right.
so just in simple form, I just for her, I think a lot of people in dedications to books, belabor sort of, for such and such who taught me that blankety blankety blank, and I just wanted a simple in her honor. Yeah.
I love that. That's very beautiful, and I'm sorry for your loss.
I
And as we say in New York City, may her memory be a blessing.
Mhm.
And one of the things I learned when I lost my mom was someone said, "Those who are truly loved are never gone."
Mm.
And I'm sure you believe that as well with Mitzi. The book is 5 bullets, and the subtitle is very long.
Oh god.
The story of Bernie Goetz, New York's explosive '80s, and the subway vigilante trial that divided a nation. We're going to connect that story from 40 plus years ago
Mhm.
to what's happening today. A lot of the stuff that's going on, the racism, the racist, the racial tension,
Yeah.
the justice system, the just the atmosphere today feels very much like that of what was going on back then. So I want to hear all about it. And we want to take your questions, folks. He's here with us for about half hour. So please ask your questions and he will answer as best as he can. And we'll get to as many of your questions as possible. I also have a couple of real serious legal folks who have sent very tough questions. So watch
Oh,
out for
good.
those
All right.
as well. But by way of background, let me just say that Elliot went to Columbia Journalism School, where I had the honor of being his professor. He was class president at a different time. It was the spring of 2000 when you graduated from the J school. You went on to the law school, so you were
Mhm,
on campus the year
mhm.
of 9/11 and everything else,
Uh-huh.
but you just kind of escaped being in journalism at that time. And then we saw your amazing career. You went on to work in law firms and then work for the Justice Department at a very senior role as a Deputy Assistant Attorney General of the United
Mhm,
States.
mhm.
And then you worked for the Rayber Group. And of course, all along, you for many years now, you've been a CNN analyst and legal analyst. And you and I have communicated mostly through every time I see you on TV, I take a screenshot and send it to you. I
Text.
take a photo, I
Yep.
text it to you. And once you even answered while you were almost on the air, I could see you were looking down and responding in a wide shot. So I thought that was pretty cool. And now here you are, author of a big new book. It's everywhere. Tell us about it, why you decided to write it, and why now?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not an accident, Sree. The very first point you started making about the book that we're going to tie it to the present day because so much from the story in 1984 I think is incredibly relevant today, and that was part of the impetus for it all. It's not just the story of Bernie Goetz. Now, let me be clear. I grew up, as you know, just outside the city in New Jersey. It's where I'm from. I was born in Brooklyn. My dad worked two jobs actually in New York City for most of my childhood. So we were going back and forth a lot and squarely in the media market in New York. And so certainly well aware of everything Bernie gets related, right? So that's, the in terms of the facts of the story. But like you said, I think this idea of number one, vigilantes and who gets to be lifted up after committing an act of vigilante or just even self-defense violence, cities and how safe they are. The entire political discourse today is about how safe cities are. That's exit 7A in New Jersey as to prod. That's where I'm from. So how safe cities are, it remains an issue. And also, um, literally, the people at the center of the Bernie Getz story continue to be on the national stage today. I mean, literally from Rupert Murdoch to Rudy Giuliani to Al Sharpton to Curtis Sliwa to the National Rifle Association, on and on and on, all intersected with this story in various parts. So what's old is new, both literally and figuratively, and it's just an interesting human story in the retelling of it.
And for the people who haven't followed this or have forgotten
Oh,
this,
of course.
yeah, we've
And
also
I
an international
in my
audience.
yeah. So in what I have found is that in my informal focus grouping, as I started putting the book together, I found that pretty much anybody, just about anybody, not everybody, I don't mean to generalize, just about anybody born before 1978 generally had a vague idea of who Bernie Getz was. I think then there's a Venn diagram of people who grew up in and around New York and know the story or just know New York, millennials and on up who know the song "We Didn't Start the Fire," homeless
Yes.
vets, AIDS crack, Bernie Getz. And I guess maybe about a third of law students know the story because people do study it a little bit in New York, but the in law class now. But I would say in general, in short order, Bernard Getz, white man, New York City subway shoots four unarmed black teenagers on the subway, runs away, ultimately getting ends up, runs away to New Hampshire, absconds for a few days, turns himself in, comes back to New York City, and is heralded as a hero by many people. And part of the issue there is that Bernie Getz was, um, New York City was historically and almost mythically rough and violent in a way that people who know New York today simply do not and cannot understand. It was just a different place than the labradoodles and Whole Foodses and matcha lattes of New York City that you think of today. Yeah.
Just mention that I was here from 1980 to 83, and I got mugged as an 11-year-old or 10-year-old in front of, the Loyola School, right, on Park Avenue. So, I
Here's
mean,
the
mugged for my lunch money, it was a very scary, but it was scary to me, but it wasn't,
yeah.
dangerous in that.
Now, you were young at the time, but you may not have been savvy or, sort of street smart enough for this. Did you start carrying additional money for the purpose of, I'm dead serious, of handing it to muggers
Yeah,
or no?
maybe, I presume I did some version of that or we were told to,
Yes.
but,
Yep.
and I also saw with my eyes on Madison Avenue multiple times cars being not carjacked, but stolen. The
Oh,
word
yeah.
carjacking didn't exist then. It was
Yeah.
just they would just come and they wanted your stereo, and if you
Yes.
remember in the '80s and '90s, there'd be signs on the car saying, "No
No
stereo,
radio.
no
And
radio."
yeah, and also just just in raw numbers, just look at a statistic like homicides, Sree. Let's say New York City's homicide rate around the time of the Bernard Goetz shooting was around 1,700 a year. Now you're talking about 300 or so homicides a year. It is just dramatically less violent on by an order of magnitude. That doesn't mean that people don't at times feel unsafe in the city, but it was just a different place on every single level. And so with that backdrop, this shooting happened, and that very much contributed to the idea of Goetz being heralded as somewhat of a hero or icon to many people in the city.
Folks, that's Elliot Williams. You've seen him on CNN. He's wearing a hoodie and relaxing with us
It's
here on
also
Substack Live.
Brooklyn Nets. Oh,
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 Brooklyn
I
Nets.
forgot. We're only on the small thing, so you can't see. But yes, it's a Brooklyn Nets
Yeah,
hoodie. Anyway,
yeah, Brooklyn Nets again. One of the things, Elliot, that if you think back to last 25 years, how many things have changed, right, in
mhm.
America? That the fact that there is a Brooklyn Nets team as opposed to the New Jersey Nets that I was used
Oh,
to,
me too. That's
or that
why. Yeah, that's why.
or you see, that marijuana is now almost legal everywhere. Gay marriage, equal marriage equality became a thing. Gambling in sports, athletes being paid, for student athletes being paid. These are things that would never have been possible. If you asked me when I was 12, 13, 15, 20, I would have said none of that's possible. So these 25 years feel like a lot of things have changed. But the point of your book is that things haven't changed either. And things have come full circle, especially when it comes to guns, violence, racism. And I want you to kind of expand on that a little bit, but
Yeah,
also what what role does one Donald J. Trump play in your book, and compare
yeah,
him to that guy from the '80s because that's your book. He still thinks it's in his '80s. You remember when he said that he loved so many different things about
yeah.
the '80s? He would keep saying that he thought he was living in the '80s at some point.
Yes, "Make America Great Again." I don't know if that was calling for the return of the Fat Boys and Run DMC, but who knows what MAGA means. No, interestingly enough, so my book, I think I mentioned some of the figures, uh, Giuliani, Sharpton, Murdoch, Sliwa, Ed Koch, the mayor, all of them were major figures in the book. The one big above the fold New York figure who doesn't have a huge role in my book, Five Bullets, is Donald Trump. And that's not for a deliberate reason or even for lack of trying or anything like that. There's just a simple fact is he didn't intersect all that much with this story. He comes up very briefly the first time as an aside by I spoke to a then young executive of the NRA who was in the organization around the time of the shooting, and he said that the only people who got concealed carry permits were folks like Donald Trump. People who were wealthy and could make a case for it. Eleanor Roosevelt is the other person this NRA executive named as somebody who was just a gun carrying wealthy person around New York City. And so
Wait,
Bernie
Eleanor Roosevelt
Eleanor
carried a gun
Roosevelt was
around.
a big and was a huge, I guess, Second Amendment icon, and people don't know that. And this comes up a little bit in the book in the context of Bernie Goetz getting denied a gun license. He applied for and lost a gun license. And real quick, I see Zach Peterson's asked, I'm not sure if Elliot is a hip hop fan. He is. But Doomtree has a song called 38 Airweight, which, yeah, as I know, is the gun that gets used. They used a song in 2014 and are a hip hop collective based in Minneapolis. Now, I will note there's a chapter sort of about maybe a third to a half of the way through the book where when Bernie gets back to New York after, because I mentioned he does the shooting, he goes and hides, absconds in New Hampshire, and then comes back, and that's where he's kind of heralded. So I talk about the zeitgeist or the mood or the moment in New York when Bernie got back, and he's sort of heralded, and everything from there's a Subway Vigilante board game that's created, and you can come to my Instagram page and look at it. I have a whole. I'm not going to pause and run into the next room and get it and show it to you because I don't want to take your time. But there's a Subway Vigilante board game that somebody creates that was just bonkers. It's basically Monopoly with homicide. There's, he shows up in music a ton, and some of the places he came up.
Is your
Yes,
family
there it is. That's
playing
my
the board
wife.
game?
Yes, we're
Yeah.
literally. So yeah, everybody take a look at that. My wife and I did it
Elliot Williams photos.
at
This is
Instagram.
Elliot thinking that Instagram will only be a place to put his occasional photos, not realizing it's going to drive
I
a lot
know.
of the attention to the book. So he's called it Elliot Williams Photos.
Yeah. So anyway, well, the problem is that when your last name is Williams and not Srinivasan, you have to figure out or your first name isn't Sree, you got to
Yeah.
figure out novel and inventive handles. I will say I did get Elliot Williams at Blue Sky, but that's just not an app I use all that. Anyway, all this to say, he takes off, and there's a part of that chapter goes through Bernie Goetz in music, and Billy Joel is obviously the big one, but Wu-Tang has a song, Clan in the Front, that references Bernie Goetz. Beastie Boys, Stop That Train, hip hop, it's Pickpocket Gangsters Playing Their Debts, I Got a Bullet in the Lung from Bernhard Goetz. Lou Reed has a song about Bernhard Goetz. There's no mafia lawyer in your corner for your 15 minutes of fame. So there's just lots of stuff about foreign debts, homeless vets, AIDS, crack, Bernie Goetz. That's the line from We Didn't Start the Fire. So anyway, he just becomes a bit of a cultural icon, and this is exactly Zach's point. And part of the reason behind the book Five Bullets was, okay, why? What is it about him and this story that so sort of seems to captivate people far more than other acts of self-defense or violence or homicide in America? And something about Bernie Goetz and the story shaped a lot of America and touched people.
And when you decided to do the story, why now? And in terms of the date itself, and there's another book that's also come out now, and you could have written about almost anything. So how
Yeah.
did you decide?
Well, there's two different. So the sort of why I am writing about it is sort of, and many people that follow you are creators in their own right or journalists or whatever else, and we all know we all have a Venn diagram of us. Right. And, there's a Venn diagram of issues that are relevant to me: race, crime, the law, politics, New York. And at the center of that, in many respects, is the Bernhard Goetz case. And so, and also just New York City, like I said, this was one of the formative news stories of my childhood. And when you think about things that you saw when you turned on the television when you were a kid, this was one, just growing up just outside New York City, I was seeing a lot about. Now, the remarkable thing, and I've been thinking about this the more I've been talking about the book Five Bullets as I've been out there these weeks, is I think about New York in the 1980s and the string of stories that came out of the city in the 1980s. Bernhard Goetz, Crown Heights, Bensonhurst, Howard Beach, Tawana Brawley, Central Park 5, Amadou Diallo, and then lesser known ones such as Willie Turks and Eleanor Bumpers. And I realize what a traumatizing series of events to be your first event that you picked up as a child. As you're consuming the news. Now, my children, who are 8 and 12 right now, would say, hold my beer with respect to the kinds of stories that they are taking in right now as kids. And so it's quite a time, you know.
I see lots of folks joining. Jacob's here, Herman, Anne, and Neil. Neil Parekh, who's
Oh,
my
of course.
partner and
I
we read
know.
along and does great work with me. Neil, I'm struggling here without your amazing production values that we use on StreamYard to be live on all those channels, but we're learning with this and how to use this. One of the things that I've been struck by is the fact that Bernie Goetz is, in fact, one of the few people still alive in the song
We didn't start the fire.
that we did start the fire, right?
So there's 3 surviving. It's Chubby Checker, Bernie Goetz, and Bob Dylan are the 3 people remaining. That take that to the trivia bank, folks. And just about
Because we lost Bridget Bardot. We
Bridget
just lost.
Bardot and Bridget Bardot died, and that about 2 weeks before the book, was sort of an odd bit of timing, and Bernard gets trended online a little bit for people who wait, who is this person Bernard Goetz, and why do we care about this story? I only keep getting back to We Didn't Start the Fire only because there's no probably higher or more accessible moment of public recognition than an artist like Billy Joel putting your name in a song, right? It's not even Wu-Tang or even Lou Reed. I mean, there's just something about and what that song represented. The song We Didn't Start the Fire literally is a litany of pretty much every major event of maybe the second half or maybe the
Mhm.
second 2/3 of the 20th
49 to
century.
89.
Oh,
That
49 to
that
89. Okay.
it's his kind
It's
of
hit
prime
yeah,
years.
right. Yeah, that's fair. And so what is
He
it
might have been born in 49, in fact, so
right.
that's my
No, exactly. So what is it about this event that puts it on par with Brigitte Bardot and Bridge on the River Kwai and the Bay of Pigs invasion, and being worthy of conversation among those things?
And that's what you're telling us in the book. And so
Yeah.
everyone, please get the Five Bullets book. It's so great to have our friend Elliot Williams here with us. Please ask your questions, post them. He's reading them directly, so he will look at them and your comments as well. Let's talk very seriously about what's happening in Minneapolis.
Mm,
You were a Department of Justice official,
mhm.
and this last year has been a shit show in so
Yeah.
many ways. You were a Deputy Assistant Attorney General of the United States of America. You worked under the Obama and Biden administrations,
Obama and
or
George W. Bush, not under
and
Biden.
George W. Bush.
Yeah.
And so, what has gone wrong? If you can, if you can sum it up in 30 seconds, the last
Everything.
10 years,
A
yeah, the last 10.
a lot has gone wrong. I think, yeah, no, I think we, there, a very charismatic leader who is very good at capitalizing on the sort of the public's lack of information and lack of knowledge of how the systems of government ought to work. I think one, I think the kinds of racial grievance that I talk about through the book Five Bullets has certainly motivated and driven people. I think there's a wave of populism taking over a lot of the world and a lot of Europe as well. And the United States has not been immune. I think there's a wave of authoritarianism that has taken over a lot of the world, and a lot of strong men have gotten elected. Someone said to me once, white people aren't going down without a fight. As a glib comment, and it's certainly that's not as pointed as I would probably ever be, but it's a powerful sentiment about a lot of the global forces and leaders that are attracting people right now. And so I think a host of forces. Now, I think with respect to the specifics of Minneapolis and even just to a lesser extent, Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles, the places that have had major federal buildups in them, is that, I think the folks who work for ICE have been incentivized to behave a certain way. The standard for hiring has gotten much lower, and that's explicit in terms of the amount of training they get, the age restrictions, and so on. And pardon me. And also just simply through salaries and bonuses and so on, and leadership that has a very aggressive agenda. You combine all of that with folks who in law enforcement inherently believed that they were the last thing standing between us and tyranny, which is often, a view held by people in law enforcement. And it's a recipe for a lot of what we've seen in Minneapolis. A lot of this could have been prevented it did not need to be this way. Even let's talk about the Obama administration. And many people have taken serious issue with the Obama administration's approach to immigration enforcement with removing 400,000 people from the country each year and being proud about it and so on. Well, it was never like this. Now, that doesn't mean it was okay by every stretch of the imagination, but it wasn't like this. And the masks, the bravado, the social media, and the boastfulness about it all has just, I think, compounded all of what we've seen. And I've found myself talking about Minneapolis a lot as I've been out talking about the book Five Bullets these days, not just because it's in the news, but I do think, a central point in the book remains cities and how safe cities are and how safe people feel cities are. And what happens when Washington or even the mayor of New York decides that a public is unsafe? It can get in people's heads. And that to me is a lot of what has driven certainly the 2024 campaign, but also, Minneapolis and New York and LA. Even in the guise of immigration, it's really about public safety and cities being vilified. And so it's just, what a time to be here. My goodness.
Yeah, there's so much happening. In my Substack newsletter, just this past Sunday, I published criticism of Obama and Biden, saying, "What about them?" And I got Professor Manu Bhagwan, who is he's a historian at Hunter College in the Graduate Center at CUNY.
Mhm.
He said Obama did increase border security and deportations, as he did drone strikes and such, but he also pushed for comprehensive immigration reform. In
Mhm.
context, the rightist measures appear to were meant to be compromises to get something back later, but he didn't get any of that back later. And
Right.
there wasn't this violence. I think by the 2024 election, if you said we're going to go after the worst of the worst, the criminals, the rapists, no one would have
No one
objected.
was going
And no
to
one did.
disagree
In
with
fact,
that.
we
No
got
one.
votes because of that, and including people who may not have voted for him. Yeah, that makes sense. And then it's this violence that's the problem. So
Yeah.
please read that story, folks. If you get it, if you just go to sreenet.substack.com, you can subscribe. It's free. We've promised that the main central newsletter will always be free, but we'll do bonus stuff like this. Today, it's free before we put it behind a paywall, but we appreciate everyone who reads. There's so much stuff out there. Everybody has a Substack, Elliot. It's hard to kind of cut through the noise. So we appreciate everyone who's watching, who's
Yeah.
here with us. It means a lot. And what I want to ask you also
Mhm.
about
Mhm.
about just to go back to the border, what went wrong with Biden's border policy? I don't think it was ever open borders. Now, there's not ever an open border, but it felt like an open border,
To
and
me.
there was no way for them to combat that perception. So talk about
Yeah,
that.
I also think part of what happened, and some books and reporting have suggested this along the way, was that the Biden administration, because of the sort of let's say pro-immigration civil rights community, plays a big, important, influential role in the Democratic caucus or the not even caucus, Democratic coalition.
Mm.
And I think they ran into trouble and were apprehensive about pushing back on that community, on that sort of advocacy and policy community. And I think that in large part seemed to animate a lot of where they ran into pretty significant challenges on the border. And then by the time they wised up to it and sort of started realizing, wait a second, not only have we not addressed this, but the public is getting agitated about it. Opponents could just use it as a point for lack of a better term, demagoguery, right? It's just easy to vilify, and it's when you have images of brown people and caravans, they are just easy to demagogue and vilify, and always have been in the United States. And I think that contributed to a lot of what sort of got us here right now.
Folks, lots of people have joined us. Tatiana's here, Dan, Rose. Thank you all for being here. Please tell your friends they can watch us live or later on Substack, sreenet.substack.com. We're going to have the entire video, as well as, I hope, some chopped up excerpts, all these great quotes that Elliot's giving us. He's really good at that, as you can see. Elliot, for your book, what kind of research did you do? You did speak to Bernie at some point, and what did you learn about the art of writing, about storytelling?
Oh,
You've done
wow.
so many other kinds of storytelling, including on CNN so often.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'll break that up into a few different things. I just the I treated it as a work of journalism, not just a work of, sort of essay or polemic or whatever else, and so I made a point of trying to contact everybody. I tried very, 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 very hard to get the victims or their families to get on the record with me. They declined. The 2 surviving I reached out to the 2 surviving victims and their families, or as many as I could, and I just couldn't get through to them, or they declined. I got on the phone with Bernie Goetz, and we can talk about that, and that crazy 45 minutes of my life I will never get back. Um, so all of those things, but also, what did I learn um, about the writing and storytelling? There's a great scene in the book American Fiction, that was the Best Picture nominee a year or 2 ago.
Jeffrey
Eh
Wright.
Jeffrey Wright, where Jeffrey Wright is sitting writing at his laptop, and he writes a character. He writes something. It's fiction, now it's different. It's different than what I wrote, but he writes something, and the character is in the room with him, and the character and his dad are having a conversation in the room, and they're talking to each other, and Jeffrey Wright says something, "I don't like this." And the guy stops, looks at Jeffrey Wright and says, "Why the fuck did you make me say that?" And the point is, um, nothing exists unless you create it when you write. And having to create a world from scratch, even if it was just New York City, which is a place that we all know and I knew but I still have to create the world. In fact, Mike, Professor Wolf, when I was at
Craig Wolf.
Craig Wolf, I was going to say Michael Wolf, but he's the journalist. Craig Wolf told us a great bit of pardon me. Craig Wolf was a professor that I had for national affairs reporting when I was at journalism school, when Sree was dean. And Craig Wolf told us about his son and the book Stuart Little, about the mouse. And there's a line that I think that begins the book Stuart Little. Stuart Little is a mouse that could drive a car. And he said that that's a powerful line in American literature because from there, the universe is established that this mouse is an anthropomorphic mouse, and that's just the world we live in. And that's the character and readers will go wherever you follow them. You just have to lead them somewhere. And it's such a silly point, but I realized what a powerful one it was for that reason. And so I just found creating detail to round out a story and make people want to keep reading it was gratifying and a lot of fun, but an enormous challenge. And I will say, Sree, the hardest parts to write by far were the law parts. There's a few chapters, 2 or 3 chapters of 5 bullets. Not a lot of the book is about sort of the law wranglings and the trial and so on, but a fair amount of it is. And those were the hardest to write because they were very hard for me, having a background as a prosecutor and lawyer and all that business. It was hard for me to just sort of put it in English and fun English in a way to make people understand it. And my editor at Penguin, Casey Dennis, she had great advice. She said, you can't just make it a textbook. You have to put characters in these things to make people care. And so it's not just, defense attorneys behave this way and prosecutors behave this way. It's Gregory Waples sat alone at the table as the prosecutor because he wanted to look small. He wanted to give the impression that despite representing the United States government, he was a man sitting by himself. Barry Slotnick, the defense attorney, walked in with 2 alligator skin briefcases and a $15,000 Piaget watch on his left hand. He wanted the world to see the flash and the sizzle. So right there, that's a way of pulling you into, okay, well, we're going to have maybe some slightly more dry legal discussion here, but these are the people at the center of it. Now that we know a lot about these two men's personalities just from the three sentences I gave you, how do they react to the things that they're doing in the courtroom? And that was a sort of challenging but gratifying aspect of the process.
Well, folks, we've got another few minutes with Elliot Williams. Would love to get your questions, your comments. Everyone should go out and buy the book, the hardcover or the Kindle version, and
Or the
he-
audiobook.
or,
Audiobook.
or the audiobook that he has read. Yeah,
I know
he's
I'm a big
promoting
fan.
that as well. I
Big
hope
fan of
there's a
the
higher percentage.
No, it's lower,
to
but
you.
it's written in my voice, and I just loved
Yeah.
that experience. It was grueling.
And I love, Spotify has that feature where you can get a few hours of premium books or
Yeah.
books if you have a premium account.
Mhm.
So please post your comments. Tell us where you're watching from. Say hi to Elliot. When you watch him on TV, you can't say hello. Now you can. And please follow him on Twitter. Is at Elliot C. Williams. And on Instagram, he is Elliot Williams Photos. Tell us a little bit about what it's like to be in government at a time. I mean, when you were there, it meant something. You were proud of it. Now we're seeing, even today, there's news that Trump is going to fire, if he can, another 50,000 employees. And we know that the conservative backlash and the strength the conservative movement and the MAGA movement's gotten, a lot of it started with Ronald Reagan, who said the scariest words are, "I'm from the
Okay, I
government
know.
and I'm here to help," and that even he would, I think, be shocked by what has happened,
Oh,
considering
God.
how many non-liberals work in the government. How
That's
many conservatives,
that's
people in DC, are so conservative at the socially and things like that, and he's lost. He should be losing hundreds of thousands of votes, but I don't know if he has until more recent days.
It's it was that's such an important point, and it's so easy to vilify government as this behemoth entity that is a bunch of liberals in pink pussy hats marching on the government and collecting a paycheck for doing nothing. It's so easy to do that. Well, I would note, having worked there, that yes, I mean, most people who work in the government, I think they traverse political ideology, and I just think in all the places I worked, it's a mixed bag of what people's politics were, and even in when I was there, often you don't know what people's politics are, and just think about, it's not like everybody walks around talking about or I guess at the time, George W. Bush or Barack Obama all the time in their jobs. They're doing jobs. You're talking about work. And even when you talk about politics, it's like, okay, Sree's a Republican, we're talking about, and you can sort of talk about issues, but it was never, and I mean this, I'm not just saying this as a deep state hack. I truly mean that people often just came to work not driven by their politics, but whether it was driven by some kind of whether it was hearing that feedback. Is that me?
No, that I think there's some construction upstairs. So sorry about that. Okay.
People are driven by, I actually think, a desire to do a good job in whatever job they have, but also sort of the mission of the organization they work for. So the idea that it's all lefty, wacko, Yahoo liberals trying to take down conservative government is just nonsense. It's just simply not true.
Can you talk a little bit? There's a question that's coming. Can you talk a little bit about what the Justice Department is actually supposed to be doing? Like it's actually the public's collective lawyer against government and its relationship with our president, especially. It should have an element of combativeness. There are lawyers. That's the original idea. Though I do want to ask, by JFK putting in his own brother as Attorney General, did he set us up for all this mess we're seeing now?
I'm not going to blame JFK for this moment. Now, should he have put his brother as Attorney General? No, absolutely not. And that was a conflict of interest, and we should call it out. But if anything, let's assume the wrongness of JFK, the post-Watergate reforms after the excesses and abuses of Richard Nixon, DOJ and the FBI were reformed in a manner to avoid those kinds of conflicts of interest. And I don't think someone's brother could get confirmed Attorney General today. I think there would be such widespread opposition, even from, I would hope, even for people within that that president's own political party. Who knows? I wouldn't
But
want to
not
see
in Megaland, not
not
with
in,
this
not in my
Congress,
mind.
not
Well,
with this Senate, that's
um, well, look. There's a there's a lawn sign around the corner from where I live here in DC. Presidents come and go. Wu Tang is forever. And my point is MAGA will come and go. And I just, yes, it will look different after this, but I just don't think MAGA and this is forever. But
and that's because you think Rubio and Vance are not capable of
they're
having this
not. I
kind
don't
of
think so.
hold on
I
these
don't
folks.
think
And
so.
could it be anyone else, by the way,
I don't
apart
think
from those
so.
2?
I don't think there is a leader with the charisma and
Mhm,
sort of whatever you want to call it, solitary unitary charm,
mhm.
if you want to call. I think you hear what I'm getting at.
I know
That
what you
he
mean.
has the
So
grip
you can
over.
see the headline, Elliot says, Trump is charming.
He is charming. He's immensely charming and eventually captivating to a huge swath of the public. I mean, that's how, I want to be clear. He didn't win in the landslides he's talking about, but he won clear victories both of the times he ran for president. That they were closer
Though this
than.
time it was
I
1.5%. It was
know.
one of the smallest
I
victories
know,
in
I
history,
know, I know, and it's not, we're
under 50.
gone are the days of Reagan winning 49 out of 50 states or whatever
Yeah.
else. That's not going to happen again, but he's absolutely a charismatic figure, even if, um, even just fill in the blank after the even if. And so, um, what was this
By the way,
about?
Sanjay says, recall that Reagan was the first POTUS who explicitly treated acting as his mode of leadership, an approach that has since trickled down to the municipal level.
You
And
know,
we have seen, of course, with Trump, he is a performer. He's on TV. He speaks. He has that ability to talk to the camera.
yeah, there's a really interesting piece in Esquire up right now about the next Democratic president. Who will it be? And not who, sort of lowercase w, like not the person, but what will that person be? And it's really about Josh Shapiro and Steve Bashir, in the sense that
Andy
will
Bashir
his dad Stephen, right, or his dad, whatever, Andy Bashir,
of
Kentucky,
Kentucky.
and the point
I mean,
being that
by the way, people not paying attention, Kentucky, Kentucky has a Democratic
Democratic, right,
governor who's pretty effective and pretty popular. So
right, right, right,
this
right.
is that's what might shock people.
But the whole point of this piece was, will the next Democratic president be in the mold of, General William Tecumseh Sherman and just burn it all down? Or will it be yet another lawyer? Because if you going back to like World War II, just about every Democratic president, not every, but the overwhelming majority,
Mm,
not World War II, what I mean, but at least since the 1980s, have all been lawyers. Literally, Bill
mhm,
Clinton, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, every nominee, Kamala Harris,
mm,
lawyer after lawyer after lawyer, John
mm.
Kerry, lawyer after I believe Kerry's a lawyer, lawyer after lawyer after lawyer.
I just want to say hi to Stefan, who's a great live streamer himself. And Pradnya writes, "My money is on JB Pritzker, even though I do like my Kentucky brother," says
Yeah.
Pradnya. So she's from Kentucky. I do, before you go, I know you need to get back to your day. I do want to ask you about uh, an issue that I have
Mhm.
with the way the last 10 years have gone. One of the things I point to is RBG and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, by not stepping down when President Obama took her to lunch. You're an 83-year-old woman with 4 cancers, and you say, "No, I want to stay so that I could swear in the first woman president." Would you agree with me that that was an original sin of the last 10 years?
I don't know. Only because I worked for 2 different judges, 2 different federal judges, and it's just hard to, well, let me
I
say
mean,
this.
hard to step down when it's a
Yeah.
lifetime appointment.
No,
Why
it's all
step down?
no, but that's the practical question. I actually think, and maybe this answers your point, and it's not a favorable one to RBG. I think they end up with, imagine for your entire life, you don't have colleagues in a meaningful way. You kind of have a bunch of other ones, but you don't, you can socialize with them, but it's not like, you go into Dunder Mifflin and you have 12 people
Mhm.
sitting at a desk. Imagine you don't have a lot of colleagues. People hang on your every word. You are often literally elevated physically from the people who are imploring you of your services. Um, you are guaranteed a salary for life. You are dressed in a robe. People don't see the way you dress. You um, your written word can dictate the actions or non-actions of an entire nation, if not interaction with other countries. And you get to do this for the rest of your life in solitude and in silence. At a certain point, they all get somewhat messianic. And I think it's very hard with all of that. It's very hard to keep to get judges to think, well, you just stepped up in a way that, in a different way, Donald Trump, my diagnosis of Donald Trump in general has been, imagine if for your entire life, and I'm talking literally at this point, 70 or 80 years, you were, oh, it describes the Ayatollah too. I'm not kidding. Um, in a different way. But imagine if for 7 decades, every single time you walked into a room, you were a superlative, right? And I know people have doubts about the president's personal wealth and how much is it puffery and so on. Okay, fine.
But
But
he's rich now. We know
but
that.
he's rich now, and he was pretty rich before. And most rooms he walked in, he could walk in and be the richest guy in the room and the guy whose name is on buildings. And now imagine if, set aside all the allegations of narcissism and he's a rotten guy, just set aside all that, just walking into the room for a period of 70 years from the time you're a kid and you're the richest guy in the room and the guy that everybody wants to hear from, that's going to totally mess with your brain and make you behave a certain way. And
5 minutes, please. Tell them to
on
come in 5 minutes.
on on a less, and I just think on a less sinister level, I think you get that with judges a little bit. And so it's all that's a long way of validating your question. Why didn't RBG step down? I just think she wasn't thinking about other people in a way that
Yeah, that's
not,
what a
it's not,
tragedy. We're all
not it's not
in the
unique to her, not unique to her, but
Yeah.
um,
Let's read a couple of comments and then we'll let you go. Trump MAGA is a clapback to the progressive gains under Obama. I can see the pendulum potentially swinging back, but after that, could we somehow get something worse than Trump? And at that point, the white minority will be will have even more grievances and even feel more threatened by then. You remember that almost the day he got elected, Mitch McConnell and others decided that they're going to push back, and that's how the Tea Party was born and everything. And where's the Tea Party now? Like it's just,
yeah,
these super patriotic people just
yeah,
disappeared, and we have the world we have it now. So before you go, the
yeah.
book is Five Bullets: The Story of Bernie Goetz, New York's Explosive '80s, and the subway vigilante trial that rocked the nation. Tell us why everyone should read this book today.
Because old is new. Well, it's I think there's two reasons. One, it's actually a fun read. It is everybody. The two different people. One was my editor, and one was actually Ellie Honig, my colleague at CNN. Read it
It was great.
independently. Used the word propulsive. It just keeps moving forward, and people have called much of the book a page turner. And I don't say that to pop myself up. That's just what people have said about the book. So it's fun to read. I also think it provides insight into the world we're living in today, both in sort of a conceptual level. These are the issues, vigilantism, race, crime, and so on, but also on a very literal level, many of the people driving politics and culture today, at least that came out of New York, got their start on that case. And it was remarkable and almost enlightening to me to really dive into all of these ways in which this case touches us today.
This would be amazing that this happens while I'm talking to you. There's a New York Times headline that says the Supreme Court now is using NDAs, which was accused of being too secretive, has now made itself even more secretive. That just broke. It came on the screen as we're talking.
What a world,
Hmm.
my goodness.
Uh, uh, Two last things.
Yeah.
What is one thing you've learned about marketing a book that you hadn't expected? That it's not enough to write the book. That's like the beginning rather than the end.
Oh, I
And
think
then I have another question.
sure. Having a book, I mean, sort of writing a book is like having another child. And again, I'm not, uh, and it's, well, and the metaphor, someone, a writer, a female writer said, and getting it out there is like the postpartum period. It's like
Mhm.
something's taken away from you and sort of what now after. So it's definitely, if writing a book is having a child, then promoting a book is a full-time job. Like it is taking on another career that I would never have, I
And
just
what has
wouldn't.
worked? What's one thing that's worked? So people watching, a lot of writers watching. Tell us.
I think you have to just be a fourth trimester. Absolutely. I think lose your humility or gain your humility, pardon, lose your and just be willing to talk to anybody anytime and just get out there. And also, you have to mine your own contacts. Like,
Mhm.
a lot of it is not relying on your publisher
Mhm.
to to do the work of the publisher. A lot of it
A lot
is
of people hire their own, like, publicist.
they do. The problem is that it's just astronomically expensive. I mean,
Mhm.
I am incredibly fortunate in that over the last decade, or even the last 2 decades, because I'm on your podcast or your Substack Live now. Sree is a former professor. I went on Marisol Castro's show. I mean, she's now the morning host on WPIX 11 in New York, a local morning television. Um, that's a journalism school contact. So having to mine your own contacts in is really something that proved to be really valuable. And you thought writing was hard. Marketing the book is harder. It's a different kind of hard because you also have to convince people to care about a thing that you know more about than anybody else in the world and is actually kind of niche. Like unless you have a book about the Kennedy Center being demolished or ICE in Minneapolis, unless you managed to write that 2 years ago and it's coming out today, you're really, for the most part, convincing the public to care about something that only you truly care about, and that can be challenging.
Before you leave, I just want to say, in a serious note, we've had so much fun, and I've learned a lot as always
Yeah.
talking to you. Two things. One, you're raising a multicultural family
Oh, yeah.
in today's America. You're a black man yourself. What 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 do you think about? What are you going to say to your kids? How you and then the second thing is a little more fun. You've ever since I've known you since you were a very young man, though you look the same. Uh, you've
There's
always
an
been
expression there's an
optimistic.
expression for that. There's an expression for that. It's "pundit, don't crack." So, you know, um
It didn't work on my case. Look at me.
oh, touche.
Uh, but we want to know, like, you've always stayed optimistic. You're always kind of chirpy in a way, even in the worst days of Columbia J School and law school at the same time. So leave us with that message. But before that, talk about the more serious angle of how you're coping in the family. How are you coping?
Coping with what? You mean with 2026 and the madness? It's
2025.
I made a glib comment earlier about hold my beer. And when I said that the news I grew up watching in the 1980s coming out of New York City was like just real quick, just a quick digression, like Donald Maness, the Queensborough president, who's a pretty big figure in New York City, got into a major corruption scandal and tried to kill himself twice, ultimately succeeding the second time. That was big news, but just what a bonkers, tragic, horrible existence of watching news in New York City in the 1980s. It was a rough time, and that's shaping kids like me as we grew up. But my own kid, if I feel like I thought 9/11 was bad, my children's
Mhm.
awareness of the news started ultimately with January 6th and and they're confronting whether it's climate change
Mhm.
or their um friends and family, their parents getting like fired from their jobs because they work for the government. So it's just America has been an exercise in high points and low points, and hopefully, we will remain a resilient nation after it. And then there was a fun question. What was the fun one?
Yeah, about how you stay kind of optimistic personally and
Um,
your
I,
family.
tr- and I'm going to ask you a similar question too. I've had this sort of focus group question that I've asked everybody. What has been your way? Because this is stressful news for many people, for other than dyed in the wool MAGA who sort of wish to see the changes in the country or whatever. It's stressful for many people. I say, well, what's your distraction or escape? And I feel like avoiding the news where I can has actually been important to me. So I took social media off my phone. So I just don't, except for Instagram, which you have to use the app. I took all the other apps off the phone. If I need them, I'll go to the desktop. I try to go to sports news. I invest or time and energy in my kids' sports. And then unfortunately, it's only 2 weeks in the spring and 2 weeks in the fall. But my garden occupies a lot of my energy and sort of gardening. And so just trying to find other pursuits other than the news just to stay grounded and sane and around family members and doing other things. That tends to be how I do it. What's your escape?
Oh, my escape is, our dog.
Okay.
She's 10 years old, Tara.
Oh,
She has her own Instagram, of course, Tara Beagle NYC, Tara Beagle NYC. Everyone follow her, please.
mhm.
And, want to just say that, we life is too short. You can't just always kind of be down. You've got to look
I know.
forward. I have a professor named Peter Herford who just turned 90. He's the
Mm,
most positive person I know, and he covered Vietnam. He's the guy who gave Walter Cronkite the piece of paper saying Kennedy was assassinated, had died. And so this man has seen everything, Saigon bureau chief, and he's the most positive person I know. So that's pretty amazing. Let's read a couple of comments and then we're out. It's almost an hour. I'm so grateful. At a writers' conference, Jonathan was told by literary agents the first thing to look at is how much social media and what kind of following do you have.
I
And
get it.
Dan says whether people were alive or not, forgets or not, the societal conflict is relevant and still a core issue for society today. And we don't have media to share common knowledge and find understanding. I'm anxious to read this page turner.
Can I say I know you wanna bounce. Real quick, I mean, I have a chapter on the takeover of the New York Post and the impact that had on coverage of crime and safety in New York. Rupert Murdoch bought the Post and got everybody all spun up and sensational, and all the tabloids came with him, the Daily News, the Newsday, right? Um, when all people are consuming was the same sources and those sources were telling them how frightened they were, they got more scared. The challenge today is that, yes, we are all consuming different sources, and it's wonderful. You can go to Substack, you can go to podcasts, but a lot of what we're seeing is making us angry too, and that it's having a corrosive impact on us as a society, sort of taking in sort of a lot of like algorithms are designed like they reward the angriest stuff, right? And so
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah. On that note, we're going to wrap up here just to say that this week, the California Post is launched by Rupert Murdoch and family to say that coincidence is, the damage he's done with the New York Post. He's now going to bring to California people. Folks, the book is Five Bullets. Please get it by Elliot Williams. Thank you so much. And everyone, please sign up for my Substack, the free version or the paid. We'll be doing a lot more conversations like this. Super grateful to everyone. Thank you,
You too,
everybody.
Sree. Bye bye.
Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye. We'll see you. Bye. Thanks. 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 Thanks.